right. Jacob, what's going on with you?
Not a lot, man. Hanging out. Just had a good day at work. At the lake on the boat with my dog. Life is good. Happy to be alive and free. How about you?
Man. I'm doing pretty good. I want to go ahead and start this by saying it has not been the easiest thing trying to set this interview up with you through the amount of technical difficulties we've been dealing with. But I appreciate your patience and your help trying to make this thing happen.
Yeah, we definitely had to work for this, for sure.
I was telling you earlier, I said, man, shit, I should have just came to Tennessee. This is crazy, but we're making it happen. And as we're filming this part 2 of your story, I want you to know that we've already put part 1 up, just did that today, and people are already really becoming engrossed in what you have to share. And I'm also hoping that they're going to come check out the channel that you're creating and want to see a lot more of what you're going to be sharing on that channel.
I hope so too. That makes me really happy. That people enjoy hearing the story. I definitely wanted to tell it, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to do it.
Well, I'm honored to get the opportunity to be sharing your story, and I'm looking forward to seeing what you're going to do with your channel. And I'm going to help you, try to give you some pointers and some ideas for content to help you grow that channel as well.
That's awesome, man. I can't thank you enough. Like I always, for several years now, I wanted to do this, and I saw my friend Clark doing it, and I mean, I'm not gonna say I was jealous or envious of him, but I was definitely inspired by him, and I wanted to do what he was doing, and I appreciate you helping me. It means a lot to me.
Vice versa, you're certainly helping me here as well, giving me a hell of a story to be able to share. Let's go ahead and pick up where we left off from part 1. It was in part 1 at the end of that video where you were being charged with murder and not even realizing prior to going into the courtroom that's what you were about to be charged with.
Yeah, I actually, like, on the way in there, I was like, am I gonna have a bail because I gotta be at work tomorrow? Like, I was getting a promotion at my job. That's one of the reasons why I went out, because I was celebrating, because they were gonna promote me. And so that's the only thing I was thinking about. I was like, man, I gotta be at work tomorrow. I don't have time for this. And I said, am I gonna have a bail? And they said, yeah, you're gonna have a bail. I go in there and they're like, yeah, $750,000 cash. You're charged with first-degree murder. And I think I misspoke a little bit yesterday. I said that's the first stage of shock, but no, it's the first stage of grief, is denial. And like I said, I heard very well the words that they said, but it just, my brain refused to process it. It was a surreal feeling. I guess you couldn't understand it unless you'd been there.
Forgive me, I've got this wire is bothering me. I'm just going to hold on to it. I want to ask you this. You get charged with murder. You don't even find out that that's what you're being charged with until you go into the courtroom. Obviously, you're realizing at this point that this guy lost his life during this fight. What are you thinking realizing that this guy was killed?
Just a lot of mixed emotions. Like I said, denial. It was just hard for me to believe it. I was just, it took a while for it to, like, actually the reality of the situation to set in. It felt like I was in a dream, I guess you could say. But of course, I wouldn't want to take any human being's life away from them. I don't even kill animals. Like, I remember I used to read a lot of, like, books about homesteading, and I would read seed catalogs and stuff. I'd be back in the hole in Trenton, and I remember talking to my mom saying, you know, I think I want to raise chickens when I get out, you know, because I never wanted to come back to prison again. And I would think, like, if I ever get out, you know, I'm just going to grow my own food and not be dependent on anybody and not feel like I got to, like, hustle to make ends meet and pay the bills. Like, I just want to be self-sufficient. And I told my mom, you know, that I wanted to raise chickens, but I knew, like, when it came time to, like, kill the chickens, I wouldn't be able to do it. And my grandma was still alive at that time, and like she started crying. She was like, they're treating him like Hannibal Lecter, and he won't even kill a chicken. But it's true. Like I really am a pretty gentle person, you know, despite what some people might think. Like I wouldn't wish death on anybody.
You get charged with murder. They give you a $750,000 bail. Do you make bail?
I did, but not during the first phase. I was eventually, I was acquitted of murder in my first trial, but they came back with an aggravated manslaughter conviction. So when that conviction got overturned by the appellate court, and I came back to the county, they couldn't hold me on no first degree murder bond anymore. They the most they could set it at, I think, was $300,000, which they did. Then after I was there a couple weeks, I applied for a bail reduction. I filed a motion to reduce my bail. The judge, he was very unprofessional. He like rolled his eyes and was like, "Yeah, whatever, $275,000." Like thinking, you know, I wasn't gonna make it anyway, so why am I wasting everybody's time? Until, you know, my mom showed up with the money, like, give us our son. And
holy moly, that's a lot of money to put up. They had to put up, what, 10% of that?
No, they had to put up all of it. I mean,
What?
they could have put up a 10%, but they wouldn't have got that back. You know, it would have cost $27,000 that they wouldn't have, you know, the bail bondsman would keep that. So no, like, they didn't have it at first, but my dad, like, they put it together and brought $275 cash. So I'll tell you something quick about that too. Like, this is how corrupt the state of New Jersey is. My appellate lawyer, I may repeat things. I forget what I told you the last time we talked, so I may repeat myself. But the appellate lawyer, his name was Stephen Kirsch, and he told my mom to get me out of New Jersey as fast as she could because the prosecutors were pissed that I was getting out. They didn't want me out. The prosecutor actually said, over my dead body, he's getting out. And
forgive me, this was during the bond phase of this?
Well, this is before I even got out.
Okay. For the bond.
Yeah, I bailed out before the second trial because they reduced my bail to something that my parents could come up with. But and this is crazy too. Like, I had just got done winning a spades tournament, and I had like 3 laundry bags full of food, and they came in and said, "Gentry, pack it up." And the whole pod just went crazy. Like, I could do, like, everybody started screaming, like it was like a standing ovation, like I was a rock star or something. But
You got all these bags of commissary from the spades tournament. You're giving all of this away, right?
yeah, I just dumped them out and gave it all back and walked out to like a standing ovation. And then this is something crazy too. Like, the police, man, like the cops lined up down the sidewalk and took their gloves off, and they all lined up to shake my hand as I walked out. Like, my mom started crying.
Why?
But
why were they doing that?
well, because I had spent so many years in that place, you know. Like, I had over 4 years in that building, I think, you know. Like, I came back for like another 6. I'd been there like 3.5 years, and I came back for like another 6 months after that. And you know, I grew to know those guys pretty well after, you know, you spend every day with somebody for 4 years, like, and they got to know like who I was as a person, and I guess they respected me.
Now, I want to clarify because I want to make sure I'm following this correctly. When the guards and the police line up to shake your hand, is this after you get the charge overturned, or is this still during the bond stage?
This is when I bailed out.
So you're
When I
telling
bailed
me
out, they
that
lined up to shake my hand.
you were in the jail for 3 to 4 years before you were able to get this charge reduced and be able to make that bond?
Yes, yeah, because I mean it was $750,000 for the first 3.5 years, 3 and some change that I was there. But when I went to prison and got the case overturned, they couldn't hold me on a murder bond anymore because I was acquitted of murder. But so the highest they could have my bail was $300,000, which is less than half of what it was before. So, my people put it together.
So, again, I just want to make sure that I'm following this correctly. You originally get charged with murder. How long
Yes, sir.
are you locked up before that charge gets reduced to the aggravated manslaughter?
I don't remember the date of my actual trial. I believe that I started picking a jury in March. I know that it was at the exact same time, or actually maybe like a week late. It was right at the same time as Casey Anthony trial, because I said it.
Wow.
I said this bitch is gonna get away with that, and they're gonna smoke me. Watch, and that's exactly what happened.
That's exactly what happened. So, okay, you go to trial for the murder charge. They drop the murder charge, or you beat them. They acquit
No,
you
they didn't drop it. I was acquitted by a jury
of the murder, and then they
Yes.
reindicted you on aggravated manslaughter because they couldn't retry you for murder.
No,
Because
they
that would have
didn't
been
re.
double jeopardy.
I lost the trial. I was acquitted of murder, but I was found guilty. See, they had a multiple, count indictment. So they were like, well, if he's not guilty of murder, we want you to come back with a verdict of aggravated manslaughter, which they did. I didn't think they would. I took it to trial. Like, I wouldn't take no deals because I was just like, man, once people hear this whole story, there's no way that 12 people are all going to unanimously send me to prison. And I can remember some of the jurors in my first trial, they were crying when they delivered my verdict and said I was guilty. Some of those jurors were crying about it. But they did it.
What kind of deals were they coming at you with? You're facing these serious charges.
None.
They didn't come at you with
Well,
any
what
deal?
they would do, they acted like they were playing like cat and mouse with me. They at one time they said they were offering me 7 years, and I said, run it, I'll take it. And then when it came time, they were like, nah, just playing. Like, they did that a couple times. Then they did 10 years, and I was like, yeah, run it. And they're like, just playing. So yeah, after that I went to trial. Then during the second trial, I actually told them, look, I'll take second degree reckless manslaughter with the maximum. And they said, no, absolutely not.
And that maximum was what?
10 years with an 85%. So 8.5. I was 2 years short. I was a year and a half. Like, if I would have pled guilty to that, I had 7 years in, I would have been immediately eligible to go to a halfway house. And like, I could, you know what a halfway house is. I could go to get a job, get a girlfriend, like, eat street food. That was something that I just wanted my life back. I wanted to guarantee my life back, but it worked out even better because they refused to give me a deal, and I ended up beating them. And if that hadn't happened, I would have never bought that house that I got. It would have been totally different. If I would have actually pled out, I wouldn't have got the wrongful conviction settlement from them, and they would have won in a sense. But it's pretty satisfying knowing that, I stood up to them, and I'll never forget that prosecutor hanging her head when they read the verdict. And I wanted her to look at me so bad. I want her to look at me in my eyes, and she wouldn't do it.
I want to backtrack a little bit because we're getting really ahead of ourselves with this. And you just mentioned the wrongful conviction settlement, which I haven't even heard about yet. I definitely want to touch on that. You get charged with murder, and forgive me, I'm saying the same thing. I'm just trying to really paint this picture for myself so I can follow. You get charged with murder. They acquit you of the murder, charge you with aggravated manslaughter, convict you of aggravated manslaughter. What was your sentence when they convicted you of aggravated manslaughter?
It was 30 with the 85 with no early release. It's it's called the NERA Act, and a 5-year running wild. So basically 35 years. When I say running wild, I mean consecutive. It's to be served after the first sentence is complete.
And what was that extra 5 years for?
It was for failure to render aid to an injured victim.
When you didn't even know that you killed this guy, you just, like you had mentioned
Right.
in the first video, you just thought you knocked him out.
Yeah. I fully thought that I would see him at work on Monday. Like, I thought he would get up, dust himself off, go drink a beer, and be like, yeah, I better not mess with that dude no more,
You get sentenced to 35 years. How do you react to that?
Well, I pretty much expected it. And when you're in that type of situation, I don't know if it's just self-preservation, but as a matter of fact, that morning I was on psych, man. I was on Xanax through that trial, through the first trial anyway. I quit before the second trial. I got off of it, but I remember I went to the nurse that morning and she said, "What's up, Gentry? How you doing? Or what are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting ready to go down here and cop this 30-piece McNugget." Like, I already knew what it was. Like, I knew they were gonna do it, and it happened. And I, like I said, I expected it, and you don't get your hopes up when you're in that position because you don't want to be like crushed. You know what I'm saying? So you hope for the best, but you expect the worst.
I'm going to tell you right now, if I was facing a 30-year sentence and knowing that I was about to get that, I don't think I could, handle that. I don't know how I would handle that. What are you thinking about the rest of your life? Are you thinking that you're going to have another chance at life after these 35 years? Like, what's going through you? Or are you thinking, you might just die in prison?
Well, in a place like that, where people are getting stabbed and murdered, and the cops can kill you. Like, the cops are crazy. They beat people to death in there. So no, like I faced the reality that I may never get out. That I could very well die in there if something didn't happen.
And how old were you? Sorry, how old were you when you received that sentence?
Can't remember. I was either 30 or 30. I was 27 when I went in there. It happened in August 17th of 2008. So that was just before I turned 28 in December of that year. So I was in there for 3 years, 29, 30, 31. So yeah, I think I was 31 years old.
Getting a 30-year prison sentence, you'll be 60 at best, 60 something at best, if you were able to get released. Yeah, man, I can't even imagine what I would be thinking. I would be thinking there is no life after that. Ultimately, had you not got that conviction overturned, you would still be sitting in there right now. Do you ever think about that?
I think about it every single day of my life. There's not a day goes by, or really, there's not a breath that I take that, I stay in constant thankfulness. Like I'm just so happy, and I guess I kind of have I call it survivor's guilt, because I think about like everybody I knew in there were like lifers, and 30 to life, 50 years, 100 year, just never coming home. And especially like when I eat, or like if I'm with a pretty girl, I think about those guys a lot, and I feel like guilty, that I'm enjoying myself, and I know what it's like in there. And one of my old cellmates, man, Planker, like I'll probably talk about him a lot on my YouTube channel. We still talk. Like, I talk to him quite often. I actually even met his dad. His dad let me stay at his house last year. I got a job in Pennsylvania, which was like That's a long story, but I had a girlfriend in Pennsylvania, so I took a job out close to her house, and my old bunky's father, had a house that he let me stay in for a while, and yeah, I do. I think about it. I think about it every day, a lot.
I'm going to switch gears real quick. I want to ask about the victim in this situation. You're going to trial. Did he have family there at this trial?
He did. His sister spoke at my sentencing. Asked him to smoke me, and his mom and dad were there.
Oh, so they definitely wanted. There was no forgiveness on their end at all. They were.
Oh no, they wanted him to hang me.
So when you got the verdict overturned, what was their reaction, if any?
They ran out of there. They took off real quick. Oh, you mean when I got the verdict overturned? So I don't know if their react. I'm sure they didn't like that, but I mean when I was acquitted by the jury, they took off. But like my mom even says, like, I used to like feel sorry for him, but when we caught them in lies, trying to smoke me. They put his mother on the stand, and basically she was exposed in lies, being a liar, and so was his ex-wife. Like, they tried to sue me and that hotel that it happened at, for a wrongful death settlement, but I had written PPOs that she had filed on the guy, saying that she tried to leave him and he drug her out of the car by her hair and slammed her head broke the sink with her face, bit her on the face, pulled her arms behind her back, and said she was going to break her arms and he was going to kill her and kill their kids. And anyway, so she gets on the stand during the what's it called, a grand jury deposition, where she was trying to get money, saying that I've deprived her of this loving father to her children. And they got her up on the stand and was like, well, now, did your husband, did he have a violent reputation? She's like, no, not at all. He wasn't violent. So she didn't know that we knew that she had filed all these protection orders against him and told what he did to her. So when that came out, I guess they dropped the lawsuit.
Let's go ahead and move on. I was really curious about the victim in this, and I appreciate you shedding light on that. You go to prison after receiving a 35-year sentence. You've been sitting in the jail at this point for how long? About 4 years?
Like 3.5. Yeah.
So you go to prison for the next 3 years or 3.5 years. What is it like for you when you first get to prison?
Well, I actually talked about this a little bit on the first video I posted on my YouTube last night. But so I get to reception, a whole van full of dudes. These 3 big giant dudes, like 6'6", 400-pound dudes, come walking up, and they said, "Which one of you is Gentry?" I'm like, "Me." And they're like, "Come with us." And there's all these lines, for nurses and, TB tests and this and that, and like just lines of people lined up everywhere. And they take me and escort me to the front of every line. And I was just like, I said, why am I cutting everybody? And they said, "You just hit platinum status, baby. You're going to Trenton." And so I was like, all right.
That's a rough prison.
Yeah, that's the worst prison in the state. So when you get in there, when you go through the door, there's a painting of a big lion that's like just broke down and bawling his eyes out. A big badass tough looking lion, but he's crying. And I guess that's them saying, like, we don't care how tough you are, how tough you think you are, like we're gonna break you right now. So they take you to the hole. Even though I hadn't done anything wrong, they put me in one left, which is solitary confinement. And there's actually part of a movie that was filmed right there in like the same cell that I was in. It's a movie about Reuben Carter, who was in that same prison. Bob Dylan sang a song about him, The Hurricane, and anyway, there's a movie. It's got Denzel Washington in it. He plays Hurricane Carter, and during a part of that movie, he goes to the hole, and it's filmed right there in One Left in Trenton, where I was at, and he starts to go crazy and lose touch with reality, and he gets all hairy, and that's really how it is. Like, I have seen people lose their minds back there, and you do get hairy as hell back there because you're not allowed to have any razors or anything. So I've actually spent like 18 months back in that unit, and it's crazy. Like, you can't shave the whole time you're there, so you look like a freaking castaway. But anyway, yeah, it's cold. They freeze you. They leave the windows open in the wintertime on purpose just to freeze you to death, and you ain't got no blanket. Like, you got one little blanket with like holes all in it. The mattress was like a ripped up piece of like styrofoam with like no cover on it, and like holes and chunks all missing out of it. Every bodily fluid that you could ever imagine all over the walls. Like, it was pretty bad. It was torturous. And they handcuff you, take you to a shower like twice a week, or no, one. I think it's 5 days, then 4 days, or something, or maybe it was 3, then 4, something like that. You don't get to shower very much, and when you do, you walk butt naked with handcuffs on to the shower. They put you in there, and it's cold. There's no hot water. You take a ice cold shower. Once I got out of there, it was a little bit better. Like, you could get a TV and all that. Like, it's still prison, but it was better than being like they definitely made you uncomfortable when you first get there, for sure.
Well, I'm sure you're going to be sharing quite a bit of your prison experience over on your YouTube channel. And for anybody who's watching this, a link to Jacob's YouTube channel is down below in the descriptions, and probably also pinned in the comment section as well. So definitely go check out his YouTube channel.
Yeah, please do that.
Let's fast forward. You're in prison for 3 years, 3.5 years. What happens that leads to you getting this conviction overturned?
Okay, so I was just talking about Planker. He when I first found out who my appellate attorney was, I tell Kevin, because he's been in there. He'd been in for 20 something years. Now he's been in there for 26 and a half. He's been there since he was 19 years old. He said, let's go down to the law library and see Ray, because that's all Ray does is read case law, and he knows all the attorneys, and he'll tell you if he's any good or not. Ray Cagno is he's a Colombo hitman. Like, he's in prison for like whacking the consigliere or whatever the hell it's called, the advisor, the mob boss, like, this dude is a legit mafiosi. Old man. Matter of fact, I looked him up not that long ago to see if he was still alive, because he was old as hell back then, and he is still alive. I looked him up like a couple months back. But so we get down there, and he's like, Ray, this is my boy Country. Like, that's what they call me in prison, Country. And he said, tell him who your lawyer is, Country. I said, Stephen W. Kirsch. And Ray said, Steve Kirsch? Who's got Steve Kirsch? You got Steve Kirsch? I was like, yeah, I got Steve Kirsch. And he said, kick back, you're home already. And I was like, what? I said, it's like that?
You had an appeal in. You get sentenced to 35 years in prison. Of course you appeal this.
Yes.
In the state of Virginia, I'm sure like most other states, the appeal process is a long and grueling process. And it's sounding like it took 3.5 years for you to actually get an appeal to go back into the courtroom.
That's true. Yeah, it took that long. It took probably a year or more for me to even, it might even took 2 years for me to get assigned an attorney. Then, yeah, it was a long process, but luckily I got reversed on the very first, on direct appeal. You have different phases. You have your direct appeal, then you have, what's it called? You have certiorari, and then you have post-conviction relief. So yeah, they call it cert, but that's like level 2. If your direct appeal gets denied, you can go to cert. If that gets denied, you can apply for post-conviction relief. Then after that, the only thing that can get you back in court is like newly discovered evidence.
Wow. I didn't know any of that, so I appreciate you sharing that. One other thing I
no
want
problem.
to throw in here, and it's super important to throw this in here. You know, when I hear about people getting back into the courtroom, getting an appeal, getting a conviction overturned, you know, they've got this high-paid lawyer or Innocence Project has stepped in. You didn't have any of that. This appellate lawyer who was representing you in this appeal, this was a public defender, correct?
It was, but so this is how that went down. Like I said, you know, not only did the police respect me in that jail, but the attorneys respected me too. And the head of the public defender's office, he called down there to the main office in Trenton and was like, look, this is a good guy. They railroaded the hell out of him. Put your best guy on this case. And they did that. They gave me the best they had.
That's unbelievable. It's unbelievable for so many reasons, and the biggest reason that jumps out at me is it was a public defender that got you back in this courtroom and, you know, ultimately helped you get this conviction overturned.
Yes.
I want to go back to what you were talking about. You go to the law library. You're talking to the old mafia dude. He hears the name of your appellate lawyer, and he recognizes this name. So this guy, obviously, even being a public defender, must have been pretty good, right?
Oh yeah, he definitely had a reputation. So yeah, I asked Ray, I was like, what do you mean, like, kickback? He said, you're home already. I said, what? He said, I'll put it to you like this. Nobody can win them all, but I bet this guy wins 2 out of 3. And so I went back to the cell and I called my mom, you know, like I was super excited to hear that. I'm like, Mom, they're saying my lawyer is really good. So I told my mom who it was, and she got a hold of the guy on the phone, and he said, give me a couple months to read the transcripts, and then I'll get back with you, and I'll tell you my opinion. So that happened, like 2, 3, maybe 4 months went by. Then one day I was talking to my mom. She said, I heard back from your attorney. She said, he told me that he has a rule. He does not bring his work home. He keeps his family life, his personal life, and his work completely separated. But he cannot help himself but to break. He said he can't help but take your case home with him, that he's taking it personally, and that he's going to do everything he can do to get you out of there. And so that was really good to hear. Yeah, that gave me more hope. And then when it was probably like a whole other year later before they finally scheduled it for the argument, you know. And I talked to my mom again. She said after the oral argument, and she said, I talked to Kirsch. He called me as soon as he walked out of the courtroom, and he said, this is another. I don't do this, you know, because that's what he said the last time. He's like, I don't do this. But he said, I never do this, and I don't do this. I don't ever say we won before the decision comes back, but we won. So I'm just like, you know, it sounds good, but like I was talking about before, you know, you can't get your hopes up, because then you'll be crushed, and it you know, I just didn't want to be hurt like that. So I refused to, you know, it sounded good, but until they came and were sending me, you know, until I was walking out the door, I wasn't getting my hopes up. But it wasn't a whole lot longer after that. I was down at Rawway. I had gotten shipped to Rawway, and I was on the phone. I called my mom. I said, Mom, how are you doing? She said, baby, I'm wonderful. And I knew as soon as she said that, but I wanted to hear her say it. And I said, why? And she started to cry, and I'm about to cry. I always cry when I'm talking about this. But she said, "'Cause you're coming home." And so yeah, I knew that my conviction had been reversed. And then all of a sudden, Rawway tried to send me to the. See, I had been on a list for years to get my tonsils taken out, and I guess they realized that I was leaving there, and they had neglected my medical care, so they were trying to send me to have surgery, but they didn't know that I knew that I was about to be leaving there. And I was like paranoid. I was like, man, these people will give me too much anesthesia and kill me and just act like it was an accident or something. After all the things that I saw the state of New Jersey do to take my life away, I didn't put nothing past them.
Let's talk about this appeal, because we just breezed through that pretty quick. When you go back into court, it's not a retrial, is it? Or is it like, what is the appeal? Do you have a new jury? Is it just the court? Is it just the judge who hears?
No, I don't go. I wasn't there. It was just my appellate lawyer and the prosecutor.
They argued each other
in front of the appellate court, in front of a panel of judges. My lawyer saying why they cheated me and how they did me wrong, and that lawyer trying to convince these judges that he played by the rules and gave me a fair trial.
What would it be that led to you getting this conviction overturned? Even though you weren't there, what was it that this appellate lawyer, court-appointed guy, went into this courtroom and argued on your behalf to get this overturned? Was it self-defense?
Well, there were a few actual reversible errors and issues that they did. I mean, there was a lot. I actually even filed a supplemental brief of my own of, why I deserved a new trial, but they didn't even read it because they basically said it doesn't matter because we're reversing it anyway based on what his lawyer has already shown us. So they never even read my supplemental brief. So basically, that they never instructed the jury. The main reason that I got the reversal was that the jury was never instructed that self-defense applied to manslaughter. They were only told that they could find me not guilty of murder by self-defense, but they weren't told that they could still find me not guilty of manslaughter by self-defense too. And basically that was the main issue that overturned it.
So basically this lawyer goes in there and argues on your behalf, hey, look, it was self-defense.
Actually, my case, I'm pretty sure it still is precedent to this day, but it changed the law. It set precedents in mutual combat self-defense. Like if two guys both agree to fight each other and walk out of a bar and one of them ends up dying, like they go to my case to hear what the judges have laid the law down as. So basically, everybody, I'm sure, like during the Trayvon Martin, they heard a lot about the stand your ground law. Like Florida has the stand your ground law. That means you don't have to run away from anybody. If somebody attacks you, you can defend yourself. But in the state of New Jersey, they don't have stand your ground. They have what's called duty to retreat, which means that unless you're backed into a corner with nowhere to run, you have to run away from somebody. That's the only way that you can claim justifiable homicide, is if you had nowhere to run and you were backed into a corner. It's called the duty to retreat. So basically they said I should have ran away from the guy and not fought him. I should have ran. But the appellate court ruled that just because I entered into a fight with somebody does not mean that I entered into a fight to the death. And that at any time, if the jury believed that I was in fear for my serious bodily injury or my life, that I could, the guy outweighed me by a lot. Like, I was really skinny at the time. I was 155, 160 pounds. Of course, the state tried to lie about that too, but then they kind of got put on blast when they showed my driver's license, and there was a picture of me, and my weight said 155 pounds on it.
There was a headline that I had read, that mentioned this guy was like 245 or 235, like an ex-linebacker.
Yeah, I guess he was some kind of football star in Oklahoma.
But again, you get this thing overturned because it was self-defense.
Right. So yeah, they ruled that, you know, if the jury believed that the guy escalated to the fight and to a point where I was afraid of being hurt, that I could use justifiable homicide, I could use deadly force, which is what the jury found. The jury was never told that my case is what made the, you know what I mean? They were instructed based on my own case law. They never knew that, but I mean, you understand what I'm saying? The whole reason why they had to be told that was because of the appellate court.
I mean, it's absolutely insane. Like you had said, New Jersey does not have the stand your ground law. They've got this runaway law, but your case is kind of paving a new way, you know, because you didn't go into this fight thinking that you were going to kill this guy. You didn't go into this fight thinking, you know, that it was going to be a situation where you needed to run away. Like you had said, you know, two guys could fight. That's what the police had told you. They didn't care about that. And
Exactly.
then you knocked this guy out. You didn't even know that you had killed him. So there's all of these moving parts to your story that, you know, really makes sense why this lawyer was able to go into this appeal and argue this and win this for you.
Yeah, and since then, like I've talked to him a couple times, and my case has actually like kept some people from being convicted, and I think it's gotten some people out of prison. So, you know, like I always wanted to, in some way, like make the world a better place, and really, that's what I'm really trying to do with this YouTube thing. You know, I'm trying anyway, but at that time, I was really, it made me feel good, you know, that if I had to go through what I went through, if it helped other people out, you know, like it was almost like worth it to me. Because I want to be a good human, you know.
I definitely want to help you with the YouTube. I'm going to work to do so. I want to get to a point where we can wrap up this second installment. I want to talk about what you had mentioned about a wrongful conviction settlement. That was the first that I was hearing of it when you mentioned it earlier. What happened with that, and how did you get that?
I hired a lawyer, and so he actually told me up front, he was like, there's no guarantee you're going to get anything from this. So I really wasn't counting on that either until a few years later. This is a crazy story. I don't know. I know I don't have time to go into the whole thing right now, but I'll just leave it at this. My phone rang one day, and it was the lawyer saying that New Jersey was offering me $150,000, and I was pretty shocked by that, and I turned it down. I said, first I said let me think about it, and then I said I don't think that's enough. And so then he came back with $225, and I asked my grandfather about it. And he's like, sometimes a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. And all I wanted was a house, you know, like I wanted my own house where I could lock the doors and nobody could steal my stuff. And, you know, like that's all I wanted in the world. And I knew that I'd be able to buy a decent house for that. And that's what I did. I took the money and I bought a house. I don't have any more. I sold it. That's a whole other story.
I want to wrap this up here. I think this is a good place to stop this at. Still leaves a lot on the table to be shared, especially over on your channel. And I want to thank you for painting this picture and explaining, you know, this entire process of what happened with you, starting with the first part of this video series and everything that you've shared here as well today.
Well, I want to thank you too. You know, I really appreciate it, and I won't forget it. And I'm happy. You know, I'm happy that people seem to be interested in this story, and I hope that especially like younger guys, you know, would hear this and, you know, and remember it, and hopefully save some people from having to go through what I did. Because I didn't think it was physically possible for me to kill that guy. Like I didn't I didn't think I could do that. You know, like I wouldn't have believed that I could physically do that, but it is possible because it happened. So, you know what I mean? Like, that can happen to anybody. Like, that's why I don't really go to bars. Like, I'm afraid. I actually, you know, I have a recurring nightmare. Well, it's always different, but it's always the same. It's always a different scenario, but it's always, it's kind of like that happens to me again. And I'm about to go back to prison, and I wake up and I'm like, thank God that wasn't real. But, you know, I still have nightmares about it.
I'm sure. Jacob, I appreciate your time. I'm going to look forward to doing this third part with you, and I will look forward to talking with you again real soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to do it, and thank all you guys for listening.
All right, buddy. Take care, and I'll talk with you soon, all right?
Yes, sir. Talk to you soon.